Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Aboim. Shalom Aleichem to the Kollel Agar de Pirka of National Monday Shiur. So we have some good news. Baruch Hashem, the new Sefer on Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes came out, and if you didn't get a chance to pick it up before Hanukkah, you could still get it now. It makes a perfect 5th of Teves gift, or even an Asara B'Teves gift. Or, we know that Asara B'Teves is coming up this Friday, and if you want to read more about Asara B'Teves, you could get the new Sefer, not the new Sefer, this has been out for a while, The Darkness and the Dawn, about Asara B'Teves, which is what we're going to speak about today. Next in the queue is a Sefer in Lashon HaKodesh about Chinuch Habanim. Speaking about Chinuch Habanim, I have a very nice little boy who's not feeling well today, so he's joining us. He's on the floor right here, and he's being very excellent. Rabbi Glatstein, round of applause for Rabbi Glatstein, who's joining us in today's share. Give me 5, David. Okay, Hishav Refuah Shlema. And today we're going to talk about Asara B'Teves. The very interesting pasuk about Asara B'Teves. It is well known that the Navi Zechariah groups together all the Tanesim. He says, Tzoim haravi v'tzoim hachamishi v'tzoim hashiv v'tzoim ha'asiri yil beis Yehuda l'sasin l'simcha l'mayadim tovim v'ha'emes v'ha'shalom ehavu. And that's what we know about all the Tanesim. He groups together Shivas B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av and Tzom Gedalia and Asara B'Teves. But there's another nevuah about one of the Tanesim, and that is there's a specific nevuah about Asara B'Teves. The Navi Yechezkel, Perek Chav Daled, Pasuk Beis says, Ben Adam, son of man, Kisav Lecha, write for yourself, Eshem Hayoim, the name of the day, Es Etzem Hayoim Hazeh, the intrinsic part of the day, Samach Melech Bavel al Yushalayim, the king of Bavel set siege to Yerushalayim, Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh. So what is this all about? That when it comes to Asara B'Teves, first of all, there's the name of the day, and there's Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh. You know, what's this all about? That we have Etzem Hayom Hazeh and Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh. What's that all about? Why do we have the shame and the etzem and the be'etzem? And this is a question that the Chassam Sofer deals with in his drashos. And the Chassam Sofer says, Ksiv ben Adam kisav lecha es shem hayom, es etzem hayom hazeh, samach melech Bavel, el Yerushalayim, be'etzem hayom hazeh. So the Chassam Sofer asks, v'yeshli diuk hakefel shem hayom, ve'etzem hayom, why the repetition, the name of the day, the intrinsic part of the day. Also, at the end of the pasuk, it stops talking about the name of the day, and it talks about etzem hayom hazeh. And what is the meaning of etzem hayom? And what is itzumay shel yom? And the Chassam Sofer deals with a very interesting question. Chassam Sofer says, you know, when it comes to all the fast days, the days that tragedy happen, they're not only days that tragedy happened. They're also days that before any tragedy happened, there was great sin on that day. The Jewish people sinned. So let's give an example. We know the Mishnah says at the end of Tainus, on Tisha B'Av, 5 things happened on Tisha B'Av. First Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Yerushalayim was plowed over. Beitar was captured. But before any of that, there was a terrible sin that seared the day as a day of disaster. What sin happened on that day? Oh, what happened on that day? The Ched HaMeraglim, the sin of the spies. And therefore we're Megalgal Chayv Liyom Chayev. Also, not only that, not only did sin happen, tragedy occurred repeatedly. Again and again and again. The same thing with Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. So on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the luchos were broken, the kohanim couldn't bring the carbon tamid, the walls of Yerushalayim were breached, apostomus burnt the Sefer Torah, They put up an idol in the Beis Hamikdash. But before any of that, there was a sin on that day. You know what sin happened on that day? The Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf. The Chet HaEgel happened on that day. So therefore that day was seared as a day of tragedy, and indeed, tragedy occurred on that day repeatedly. But now let's focus on Asar B'Teves. Number one, no sin at all happened on that day. There was no sin that happened on Asar B'Teves. Only Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Yerushalayim. And yet, when it comes to Asar B'Teves, we find this unusual phenomenon that tragedies did not happen on Asar B'Teves, but they seem to happen in the immediate vicinity of Asar B'Teves. So, for example, on the 8th day of Teves, Nehemiah ben Chaklaya passed away, and the Torah was translated into Greek. And on the 9th day, Ezra died. And isn't it interesting that these tragedies did not happen on Asar B'Teves? You know, why doesn't Asar B'Teves follow the same pattern as the other Tanesim? So why wouldn't Nehemiah and Ezra pass away on Asar B'Teves? Why wouldn't the Torah be translated on Asar B'Teves? And also, like we mentioned, on Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, the Jewish people sinned with the Egel. On the 9th of Av, they sinned with the Meraglim. So on the 3rd, they killed Gedaliah. But what happened on Asar B'Teves? What Shemetz Davar, asked the Chassam Sofer, happened on Asar B'Teves? So the Chassam Sofer says a Davar Nifla Ad Ma'od. And that is, the other Tanesim, the day of the month caused the tragedy. The month of Tammuz, the month of Av, the 17th of Tammuz, the 9th of Av. But when it comes to Teves, it's not the month of Teves, and it's not the 10th. Instead, it's a different factor. It's the number of days from Rosh Hashanah until that day. How many days from Rosh Hashanah until Asar B'Teves? If it's a year where both Tishrei and Cheshvan are Chaser, in a month where Cheshvan and Kislev are Chaser, then the 98th day will come out on the 10th day of Teves. Now, what's significant about the number 98? The number 98 is a number of tragedy, because that's the number of klalos in Mishnah Torah. Now we have two toichachos. We have toichacha of Taras Kayanim, of Vayikra, B'chuk Kaisa, and we have the toichacha of Mishnah Torah. Now what's very interesting is the toichacha of Mishnah Torah is the tragedy of Churban Bayesheni, of what we're suffering from today. And therefore, the number 98 is a tragic number. And in a year where Cheshvan and Kislev are Chaser, the number 98 takes us to Asara B'Teves. Now, in a year where both months are Chaser, so then the 98th day is the 10th of Teves. And in fact, the year that Nebuchadnezzar set siege to Yerushalayim, Cheshvan and Kislev with both Chaser. And a year where one is Chaser and one is Malay, the 98th day will come out on the 9th of Teves. And that's when Ezra HaSofer died. And the year that Ezra HaSofer died, the 9th of Teves, was the 98th day. And in a year where both months are Shalem, then the 98th day takes us to the 8th of Teves. And on that day, Nehemiah died, and the Torah was translated into Greek. So it's not that any particular day. You see, Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, it's the 17th of the month that caused it. When it comes to Tisha B'Av, it's the 9th of the month that caused it. When it comes to Asar B'Teves, it's the 98th day that caused it. This is what the Torah says in Yecheskel. Right, Etzem Hayoim Hazeh, Itzumai Shel Yom, the number. It's not the day. It's the Etzem day. It's the intrinsic quality of the fact that it's a day, not a day of the month. Etzem Hayoim means it's the actual day, but not in the calendar date of the month. So it's the 98th day that caused it, and Nebuchadnezzar was reliant on it when he set siege on that day. But we would like to expand this concept and teaching, and perhaps we could uncover that maybe there was a chet that happened on Asar B'Teves, and it would be very thematic to the subject matter that we're talking about. Rav Asher Weiss, in his Sefer on the Parsha, actually in the English edition, he brings that of all the episodes discussed in Bereshis, the episode of Yosef is treated in the most detail. The story of his dreams, the conflict with his brothers, reuniting with his family. It occupies 4 parshios, about a third of the Sefer. The lives of the Avos are detailed in even less detail. So Avram Avinu has Lech Lecha, Vayera, Chayesara, a little bit of Toldos. Yitzchak Avinu only has Toldos. Yaakov Avinu has Toldos, Vayetze, Vayishlach. But there's no storyline that occupies more space than the sale of Yosef. Why is that? There's an amazing comment of Rabbeinu Bechai. Rabbeinu Bechai in Parshas Vayechi says that Yaakov Avinu looked at the names of all of his children, and he saw that in the names of his children, every letter of the Aleph Beis appears except for the letter Ches and Tes. So Yaakov Avinu says, if they have no Chet, I need to tell them when the Mashiach will come. But then Yaakov Avinu realized, not only is there no Ches and Tes, there's no Kuf and there's no Tzadi either. There's no Kates. So Yaakov says, I cannot say the Kates. That's why it's a Parsha Sesuma. So Yaakov studied the names of his children. He saw there's no Ches and Tes. He says, they have no sin. I'm going to tell them when Mashiach is coming. And then he saw, well, not only is there no sin, not only is there no Ches and Tes, there's also no Kuf and Tzadi. So he decided not to tell them. Chazal also tell us that the Shechina departed from Yaakov Avinu when Yosef was sold. And the Shechina came back to him when he was told that Yosef was alive. You know, what's the meaning of all of this? That the Shechina came to him when Yosef was sold. The Shechina left him when Yosef was sold. It came back to him when he was told that Yosef is still alive. And furthermore, I mean, if Yaakov saw there was no Ches and Tes in the names of the brothers, then at the very same time he should have seen that there's no Kuf and Tzadi in the names of the brothers. Why did he have this moment where he said, hey, there's no Ches and Tes in their names? So then why did he think there was a Kuf and a Tzadi? There was a moment in time he thought there was no Ches and Tes, but there was a Kuf and a Tzadi, and then later he discovered there was no Kuf and Tzadi. What's the meaning of all that? So the Chassam Sofer explains in the Sefer Drushim V'Agados Chassam Sofer that Yaakov Avinu always knew there was no Kuf and Tzadi in the names of the Shvatim. But Yaakov Avinu thought that at his deathbed, with the brothers standing around him, gathered as one entity, the kibbutz of Klal Yisrael, created an entity that although in their names there's no Kuf and Tzadi, the kibbutz, the word kibbutz, has a Kuf and a Tzadi in. Therefore Yaakov Avinu says, okay, I could tell you when the Kates is, because you have no Ches and Tes, but you do have a Kuf and a Tzadi. But then Ruach HaKodesh rested on him. And Yaakov realized that they were really not united. You see, he never knew that the brothers sold Yosef. He thought Yosef was captured. He was ripped apart by a wild animal. Yaakov realized for the first time, Vayemaruhu varoivu, Vayistemuhu ba'alei chitzim, that his life was embittered, and he was hated by his adversaries. So he realized this was no real kibbutz, and that's why Yaakov Avinu says to the brothers, when it's a Parsha Sesuma, he says, I want to tell you what will be ba'achros hayomim. So he says, Heyasvu va'agido lachem, hikavtsu v'shimu, hikavtsu, make yourself a kibbutz. If you make yourself a kibbutz, then maybe I could let you know what's going to be in the end of days. Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chavar reveals something very powerful. You know, we tend to understand that why did the Shekhinah leave Yaakov when Yosef was sold? We tend to think, well, the Shekhinah left because Yaakov was sad. And why did the Shekhinah come back? Because now Yaakov was happy again. No, that's not the real reason. Says Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chaver that the unity of the entity of the Jewish people allows the Shekhinah to rest on Klal Yisrael. Says Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chaver, Yadua shekol ma'amad u'matzav u'ma Yisraelis hu b'sheyesh achdus v'Yisrael. We know that any state and gathering of the Jewish people is only possible when there's unity. The Medrash comments on the pasuk, Vayikor Yaakov Levanov. Yaakov wanted to reveal the end. Nistalka himenu Shechina. He says, maybe Chas v'Shalom there's a psul. He says, Shema Yisrael. Now, says Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chaver, the entity of Klal Yisrael is comparable to Adam HaShalem. Adam Shalem is a complete man, composed of many limbs, organs, sinews, where each organ has a specific function and tafkid, but that organ is only a component of a greater entity. So the idea, the concept of Achdus Yisrael is when people realize, okay, I have an important function, and my group has an important function, and my shul has an important function, and my machane perhaps that I belong to has a function, but it is a component of the greater entity called Klal Yisrael. In other words, the hands would never boast over the feet, or over the heart, or over the liver, or over the spleen, or over the eyes. Each one is part of the team being Adam HaShalem. That's the way we have to view Klal Yisrael. And on such an entity, the Ribbon Shalom dwells and rests and resides. Says Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chaver, when the brothers sold Yosef and there was period halavavos, the Shekhinah left, not because Yaakov was sad, but because we were no longer the entity of Klal Yisrael. Without Shalom, with period halavavos, there is no entity of Klal Yisrael. But when Yosef revealed himself and the brothers made up and they regretted what they did, and there was Shalom beineim, v'techi ruach Yaakov avihem. Not because now he's happy, not because now he's in a better mood, but because now there is an entity called Klal Yisrael, an Adam HaShalem upon which the Shekhinah could rest. We all know that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of sinas chinam and period halavavos. Why? Is it because it's such a terrible sin that as a punishment Hashem destroys the Beis HaMikdash? No, it's more fundamental than that. The Shekhinah can only rest on a composite entity called Klal Yisrael. But when there's sinas chinam, there is no such entity. So there can't be a Beis HaMikdash. So when Yaakov Avinu wants to reveal to his children when Mashiach will come, his message is, hey Asfu, gather as one entity. And if you gather as one entity, bi'ahava, v'achva, then I could tell you what will happen when Mashiach comes. However, what happened? The Shekhinah left Yaakov Avinu. You know why the Shekhinah left Yaakov Avinu when he was going to tell them what will happen in the end of days? Because when Yaakov foresaw the end of days, he saw that in the end of days there would be great period halavavos. There would be great disunity. And seeing that disunity in the era before the coming of Mashiach, Yaakov Avinu was not able to reveal, in fact, when Mashiach would come, seeing that in that time, before the coming of Mashiach, there would be, unfortunately, period halavavos in Klal Yisrael. Now, let's go back to the number 98. The number 98 is very significant because Asara b'Teves is the 98th day of the year, corresponding to the 98 klalos in Kisavai. Rashi and Pinchas says that on Sukkos we bring 98 parim to be mechaper for the 98 klalos of the teichacha. You know what else is gematria 98? The word sinas chinam. Chinam is 98. As in the pasuk, Ki chai amar Hashem chinam nimkartem v'lai v'chesef tigaelu. So says Hashem, you were sold because of chinam, and not with money will you be redeemed. Says the Holy Chida, the teichachos of Kisavai were fulfilled in Bayesheni. And how many klalos are there in in the teichacha of Kisavai? 98 klalos. 98 klalos, gematria chinam. If they happened in the Bayesheni, they were precipitated by sinas chinam. This is the meaning of chinam nimkartem. You were sold because of chinam. The second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of sinas chinam. Therefore, v'loi b'kesef tiga elu. You will not be redeemed with money. Money is a remez to mitzvahs. Like oihev kesef la yispa kesef. One who loves mitzvahs will not be satiated with mitzvahs. Since the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and not only the Beis Hamikdash, all the klalos of the second, in the times of the second Beis Hamikdash, and its destruction, all of those curses happened because of sinas chinam. The Beis Hamikdash will not be redeemed then b'kesef. B'kesef means money. We could do mitzvahs from here until forever. The Beis Hamikdash will not be redeemed, not be rebuilt through our mitzvahs. V'loi b'chesef tiga elu. We will not be redeemed through mitzvahs. Instead, we will only be redeemed with ahavas chinam. Because if the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of chinam, if the klalos of Kisavai were precipitated because of chinam, so then in order to rebuild and in order to rehabilitate the Jewish people and protect us from the 98 klalos, what we're going to need is ahavas chinam. Says the Chida, Lefi divrei hazayar chadash, the teichachos tavai, that the teichachos of Kisavai niskaimu b'bayesheni nicha. The bayesheni nechrav mishum sinas chinam. The second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of sinas chinam. Like Chazal say, and the teichachos of Kisavai are 98. This is what it means. Chinam nimkartem v'loi b'kesef tigaelu. Chazal say, oyev kesef, one who loves mitzvahs will not be satisfied with mitzvahs. And therefore, since the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of sinas chinam, therefore before the Geula we need achdos. Chinam nimkartem. The teichachas came because of sinas chinam. And the kiyam ha-mitzvahs therefore will not help. We will need achdos. Marv Rabbi Sai, you ready for this bombshell? Chassam Sofer asked, every other fast day, there was sin that seared the day as a day of tragedy for the Jewish people. On Shiva Asar B'Tammuz was the day of the Chet HaEgal. On Tisha B'Av was the day of the sin of the Meraglim. What happened on Asara B'Teves? So, well, says the Chavetz Chaim, says the Chassam Sofer, it wasn't about the 10th of Teves. It was about the 98th day of the year. And the 98th day of the year is the day of Chinam. Comes up Shlomo Fisher, Zechat Levracha, and he says that although it's not Mavuar, what happened on Asar B'Teves? He would assert that the sale of Yosef happened on Asar B'Teves. He says, Hinei Mechiras Yosef Loi Purash Be'eza Yom Haya. Doesn't say what day the sale of Yosef was. Ve'ilulei demistafina amina. If I would not be afraid, I would say Shahaya b'yoyim Asar B'Teves, that it was on Asar B'Teves. And even though there's no raya, a zeicher is the mazel of Teves is mazel gedi, and the gedi is mesamel v'ched of Mechiras Yosef. Vayishchatu seir izim. Marv Rabbi Sai, a friend of mine, Rabbi Yosef Deutscher, also pointed out that in the slichos for Asar B'Teves we say taroif, taraf. Perhaps also that's a remez to Mechiras Yosef, but would answer the question very beautifully. What chet happened on Asar B'Teves that it created it as such a day of tragedy. If it is, in fact, Mechiras Yosef, it would come out quite stirring. And the way we set it up, where according to the Chassam Sofer, Asara B'Teves is the 98th day of the year. And that's the day corresponding to the klalos of Mishnah Torah. And those klalos happen because of sinas chinam. There is no greater example in our history of this sinas chinam than the sale of Yosef. Now in the future, the number 98 will turn into a great rejoicing. We know the Chidah tells us the word Nagila, V'nisma Chabach, Nagila, is Gematria 98, because in the future it will turn L'mayadim Toivim, like the Navi says, Tzayim Haravi, V'tzayim HaChamishi, V'tzayim HaShavi, V'tzayim HaAsiri, Yiyah L'Beis Yehuda, L'Sasain, U'L'Simcha, U'L'mayadim Toivim. Rav Asher Weiss points out that how important it is to note that the subject of the sale of Yosef occupies more space in the Torah than any other topic. And that is, surely this is because Yosef's story has the greatest relevance to our own lives. It was the senseless hatred between the brothers that ultimately led to their descent, where their children were enslaved and tortured for hundreds of years. Generations later, retribution was exacted again when Rabbi Akiva and other 9 Tanaim were punished, executed by the Romans. And we don't know all the plans of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We don't know the cheshbonos of Hashem. But one thing we know is that a good part of our suffering now and throughout history is because of this type of sinah that we exhibit between brothers. And if we're able to learn the lesson of the Mechiras Yosef and try to repair that type of infraction, then in fact we will be zoicha that the Tzoim HaAsiri Yiyah L'Beis Yehuda L'Sasain U'L'Simcha U'L'mayadim Tovim. Thank you very much, everyone. Have an easy tainus, and we'll see everybody soon. Kol tov. Yeah, I think